but she knew you were going to play with her toys, and she didn't want that to be distracting. So
yeah, exactly. Thank you. We can do the lights now. People are not necessarily built psychologically the way we assume, which we assume people are visual and auditory, but in truth, unless you've had a child and then you know that the truth is that everything goes straight for the mouth and the hands, because that's what we really are. We're not just visual and auditory. Okay? And for that reason, culturally we have this obsession with total immersion in fiction, but in reality, the closest most people come is maybe going to Jordan's once in a while, or on a vacation they might go to a whole 4D ride once in a while, a couple times in a lifetime. But for the most part, there's all these great, cool, fun toys out there, and these are mostly here or could be here, so I'm not going to go through them in detail at the moment, but there's all these cool things that mostly the typical human might think of or daydream while they're reading about it in the Sky Mall. And that's about it. Okay? Yes? And then go home, and this is what you do. And this is where we are, basically. And even here in the Microsoft Center, if you look around, this is about it. Okay, why? Well, I could give you a very long academic talk on exactly why that is and why it happens, that there's all these cool things out there, but not necessarily something that ends up in a typical consumer's hand, or in my case, I care about education, in students' hands. So it's actually an opportunity. That is not, it's left on the table. Each time there's a new technical paradigm, there's all these cool things that get developed in labs, the military uses them, they're getting pushed out to gamers, and the gamers in the audience might even recognize it. Somebody recognize this? Yeah, okay. It gets to the gamers, but those of you who aren't gamers might not even know what it is, okay? It's a Nintendo Power Glove, okay? So, and that's very old. That's like 20 years old, okay? So it's basically an opportunity. It never gets pushed out into the consumer market. It doesn't get pushed into education in a broader way, and there's reasons for that. So it gets left on the table every time, and it's a huge place where you could make some business money, actually. So digital experience, that's what I'm up, and what I'm about. And what I'm really doing is it's an experiment. At this point, originally, it was going to be a nonprofit. There's a very long story there I'm not going to go into right now. But right now, it's still trying to promote it. The idea that if you experiment, there are possibilities that are not explored usually. We're starting with experimentation in the sense of putting together as many different technologies as possible to see not just what each one does, but how they could be used in combination as well. And so right now, we've got like maybe 8 demos here right now. We could have up to 20. And when you put that many things together, you start to combine them. You start to get a sense of what does and doesn't work, and how much power there could be, especially in the integration. And not just the integration of different kinds of systems. Usually what will happen is something like Oculus Rift, a new VR system coming out, will work with one just kind of content like games. Okay, they're just going to go do games and nothing else, okay? And then they may not even work with something else like a Leap. Okay, the Leap works with the Leap, but doesn't work with Oculus. So there are different kinds of platforms that tend to not work together. So first off, you integrate the platforms, but also the content. So for instance, Leap might not have great content, or the Oculus Rift is doing games, but maybe not virtual travel. So there's all different kinds of opportunity by integrating different kinds of content. So for instance, what if you can take an Oculus Rift? This is a demo. I don't have time to get it up here. This is one of my demos. Mine are integrated. Recently, they've just released a live flyover of Mars. I don't know how many of you have seen this. It's a really cool demo where they've actually taken the actual data of Mars and put it all together into a cool flyby. I don't know if I'm going to have time to do this right this minute. I'll probably come back to it. But the idea is, what if you take an Oculus Rift, which is a new VR headset coming out, combine it with this data from Mars, and then have a Leaper connect to actually fly through it yourself. That's what I mean by integration. The possibility of coming up with really cool things that people might want to do. Now, that's just for the space geeks. There's other things we could do as well. Okay, I'll come back to that. In fact, these videos are all available over here for you to see as well. Now, integration is important, but the thing that really tends to keep things from working is even when these things are out there, the companies die. Each generation, good companies come out, good technologies come out, and then it's not heard of by most people. In fact, many of the technologies I have here, many of you may never have even heard of, or you've heard of them but barely seen them. For instance, you may know that there's this cute little brain control toy. How many of you have heard of the brain control toy? it was a Christmas thing a couple years ago. Okay, there's a toy here that you can control with your brain. Some people have heard it if they've had kids. They don't realize this is a brain interface, that you can actually control the computer with your brain. Okay, so these are the things like promotion is getting people aware. There's a keyboard over here, a projected keyboard. Many people haven't heard of it. The leap. Okay, how many of you know what a leap is? Good. Some of you don't. How many of you know you can get it for $30 right now at Best Buy? Okay, you can control, okay, good. Very few of you though. The rest of you wouldn't do that, wouldn't know, okay? So that's usually a problem of promotion. Even when there are things out there, they do get to the market, many people aren't aware of them and they don't know they're there and they don't buy them or even know why they would want to use them because they may not have good content to go with them. So the idea is that instead of just leaving it out there through promotion, you try to get to the point where you put it in the public eye so that then you get to the point where people are aware of it, there's commercial opportunity. Of course, ideally, you want to come up with a killer app, right? That's the key. Well, if you do enough experimentation, it's hard to say. You have to experiment. You have to try it and see which things work together really. Okay, for instance, right now, one of our demos back here is a driving game that many of you might, how many of you have seen the GT wheel? Okay, I've got a GT wheel here, okay? There's also an Oculus Rift, which is on order. We wanted it here today, but we haven't got it yet. Okay, certain games can do both. Okay, but then what if I talk to NASA and get real Mars or Moon footage? So you could actually combine these all together and go, driving on Mars or the Moon. Okay, that's what we mean by integration opportunities. That could be a killer app. Another one, how many of you saw the U2 3D movie when it was over the aquarium? Wow. See, experience. The aquarium used to have the U2 concert in 3D that you could go see at their IMAX theater. Okay, what if you could go to a concert in 3D with the Oculus Rift? They're not talking. Or what about all those IMAX movies? What if you could just dial them up at home and see them in 3D at home? These are things that nobody's talking about. So that's what I mean by opportunity. This is one of my partners works with Harvard in the MFA Giza project to digitize all this and be able to see it in 3D. The typical person may not even know that exists or has never seen it. So it's a promotion issue, and let alone commercialization. And this one other one is virtual travel. How am I doing on time? Okay. So another opportunity would be virtual travel, for instance. Maybe this is it. No, that's not. How many of you have heard of Google Art Project? Good. Okay, what if you could actually go out and see? There we go. Okay, so virtual travel is another one. So what if you could actually go to every museum? The data's there, the tools are there, but who's going to do it together? This is just a teaser that Google made for they've digitized all the museums. So you could actually sit and even in 3D go tour all the museums. It's not something that most people, how many of you ever thought of doing that? You could, okay. How many of you have ever gotten your hands on an Oculus Rift? Okay, yeah, they had a huge event here a couple days ago. It was really interesting. So the idea is there's all these opportunities, and really one of the biggest problems is people just aren't doing it. It's a problem of tying things together, experimenting, getting the right combinations of things, the right combination of technologies and content, and then commercializing them and promoting them, and getting them in the hands of consumers rather than just stopping at games, which is what most people do these days. Okay, and I've got my demo set up here, a very quick tour. This is a physical toy that allows you to control it with your brain, and all the documentation is here. It's called MindFlex. This is called MindWave. This one is where you can actually sit and put this on your head and control the application with it, and it walks you through a training. This is a leap. You can control the computer without touching it. I call this one, by the way, this is May the Force Be With You, because all of these can be controlled without touching them. Okay, this is all controlling the computer without interfacing with it at all. And this, of course, is the projected keyboard. And that will interface with any Android or iPhone. If you're a Bluetooth device, that's a Bluetooth. And then over here, we have my iPad. These are glasses that most people have never seen or heard of, but you can actually, if you put these on and you play a YouTube video on my iPad here, you will see it in here instead of on the screen in 3D, basically 3D. So it's a movie. So, and what I've got set up here for you to look at is the Mars Showcase, which is what I was showing up there. The art project, which is the museums, which you just went through. The Oculus demo, there's a demo here that was done by one of my partners about what an Oculus Rift is, if you're interested, which is a visual. We've also got a Wikipedia page on it if you want. There's also a Giza flyover, if you're interested in seeing Giza in 3D, and two YouTubes, which is a Beautiful Day and With or Without You. So you can see them in 3D. Okay. And here we have a system which is the driving wheel and a projection to see the game so anybody can see it, and the driving pedals on the ground. And ideally, it would have had an Oculus Rift attached, but we just didn't get there today. So in the future, this would actually be a 3D driving simulation. Okay, that's it.
So, yes, so just gonna give big hand. What's the lava lamp all about?
Oh, that's just the made the force speed.
Okay. Just a lava lamp. So I was told that the reason this is actually, the demo is you demoing, which is why it's just interesting, because it's like, how do you demo an immersive experience? And she's like, well, just have you guys demo it. So that's kind of a slightly different thing rather than her doing it. The idea was to get you guys doing it. So this is all going to be set up here for as long as you guys want to play with it. And she asked me when we were going to get kicked out, and I said,
a while.
But let's start maybe with Q&A, and then you can play with it, and then we'll do maybe last shout-outs and things like that before we do that.
I couldn't help noticing the original slide you had the perception model of tactile and touch and everything, yet the large array of things there don't involve any of those senses. Can you just touch on that a bit?
Okay, yes. These are actually midways haptics. Technically, they're haptics even though they're not. In terms of other haptic devices, we could use other game devices, but we couldn't set those all up right now. The Nintendo Glove, for instance, in fact, is the historic. Most people don't realize that before the Kinect and the Leap, in fact, it used to be a physical glove. One question is this: the wheel is there for a reason, because technically you don't need a wheel anymore. You can do it with a camera, but maybe you want the wheel. Maybe you want the glove. And one of my theories is you do need the glove. It's nice that the Kinect and Leap is out there, but in fact, probably you have to go back to the physical tactile device. So it is actually related.
I agree.
Yeah.